Hiya, this is part 3 of how I've used JavaScript and Articulate Storyline triggers to enhance my e-lesson. To recap, I want the submit button to be disabled when the timeline starts and for it to become enabled when the user has selected 4 options. My initial solution was to create the following. 1. A trigger to change the submit button to disabled when the timeline starts. 2. A variable to keep track of how many cards have been selected. I called this variable count. 3. Triggers that will cause the value of count to go up by 1 each time we click on a card. 4. A text box that displays the value of count so we can see how the value of count changes as we perform our tests. And 5. A trigger to make the submit button enabled once count equals 4. Now let's look into each of these items in more detail. Step 1. Let's create a trigger that makes the submit button disabled when the timeline starts. And here's how you do this. We create a new trigger. The action that we want to perform is to change the state of the submit button to disabled when the timeline starts, and the object, the timeline of which we are tracking, is the slide itself. So okay that. And step 2, now we're going to create a variable to keep track of how many cards are selected. So the way we do this is we click on the icon for managing the project variables in the triggers panel, and then we click on the plus sign to create a new variable. So we give the variable a name. If you look at the already created one here, the name of the variable is count. The variable type is number, and the default value of the variable is 0. And now step 3, we're going to create triggers to increase the value of count by 1 each time a card is selected. So let's click on rectangle 1 to select it, and then we're going to create a new trigger. The action that we are performing is adjust variable. The variable that we are adjusting is the one we've just created, variable count. The way we are adjusting the variable is we're adding 1 to it. And this is going to happen when the user clicks on rectangle 1. So the principle is when the user clicks on rectangle 1, the value of count goes up by 1. And that's going to happen when the user clicks on each of the rectangle that we have on the stage. So we'll repeat the same process for all rectangles on the stage. But I've already done that on the next slide, so it's ready for us to preview it in a bit. And now step 4, for testing purposes, you can track the value of count by displaying its value on the stage. And here's how you do that. We're going to go on Insert. We're going to insert a text box on the stage. And then, with the text box still selected, we're going to go on Insert again, and then click on Reference. And then we're going to click on the variable, the value of which you want to display. In our case, we want to display the value of count. So okay that. And remember that this is for testing only. So once we're satisfied that the variable and the triggers are working the way we want them to, then we can delete this off the stage. And now step 5, let's create a trigger that makes the submit button enabled once the user has selected 4 cards. And this is how we're going to do. Create a new trigger. And the action we want to perform is to change the state of the submit button to normal. And this is going to happen when the variable changes. The variable that we are tracking is the variable count. And the condition is as follows. If the variable count equals 4. Okay, so once again, if count equals 4, what's going to happen is that the state of the submit button is going to change back to normal. So okay that. And then when we preview the slide, you can see that the submit button is disabled. The value of count is 0. If we click on a card, the value of count goes up by 1. Click on another card, and the value of count goes up by 1 again. The submit button is going to become enabled once we have selected 4 options. There you go. So now it's enabled. So we can submit that, and then we get the feedback that we've not selected the correct response. So at first, this looks like a perfect solution, right? But let's preview this slide again. So let's suppose I select 3 cards, 1, 2, 3, and then I deselect one. You can see that the value of count goes up by 1. And why is this happening? Well, the value of count goes up by 1 each time I click on a card, irrespective of whether I'm selecting or deselecting a card. So to make sure that the submit button only becomes enabled once 4 cards have been selected and not clicked on, the variable count has to behave in the following way. If a user selects a card, the value of count needs to go up by 1. But if a user deselects a card, the value of count needs to decrease by 1. Initially, I tried to resolve the problem with triggers only, but for me it didn't work. If you can resolve this with triggers only, I'd love to know what you've done, so let me know in the comments. But the solution that I came up with involves JavaScript, which I will show you in my next video. So I'll see you later.